All right. How old are you?
49.
And where are you from?
I'm from Ladson.
Where all have you lived?
I've lived in North Charleston, Ladson, Boone, North Carolina.
Are you married?
Yes,
Do you live with anyone else?
just my husband.
What has your path to parenthood been? Giving birth, adoption, surrogacy, etc.?
Oh, none of the above. I've chosen to not have children.
So what were your experiences of health? How have your experience of healthcare been?
Oh, well, some of it's been difficult actually to get the health care that I needed, like regular mammograms and pap smears and that sort of thing. Eventually I did find a place to go, a clinic in Somerville now, to get the regular exams I need.
So I guess you've had challenges accessing reproductive health care.
Yes.
Can you describe some of those?
Describe what?
Just like what was challenging, the most challenging about accessing reproductive health care?
The most challenging is that there isn't very good accessibility to women in lower poverty and no insurance situations who maybe don't have the insurance to go to a private doctor to get the regular health care or the birth control that they need.
Do you know what HPV is?
I know some about it. I better say no. I don't know enough to explain it, no.
Have you ever seen or heard any messages about HPV, like about the vaccine or anything?
I have TV commercials, some stories on the news about how girls should get vaccinated and parents are not willing to do that to their daughters that are young enough that shouldn't have to worry about an STD.
What did you think about those messages?
Well, I thought that maybe since they were hitting a younger audience with girls, and I think they were around the age of 12, that maybe that was too young, but in this day and age, I'm afraid that girls might be starting to be active sooner than they should be, so maybe it's a good idea to start preventative care earlier than what I would have growing up.
How do you feel about the HPV shot for yourself?
Well, I only have one partner, so I don't feel I would necessarily need it. If I were single and active, then yeah, I'd get it.
So, how did you express yourself with reproductive health care professionals? Is it ever hard for you to share things with your doctors?
No, it's not real hard to share things with my doctors that are going on with me in a health way. If I'm having a problem, I feel the doctors need to know about it.
What comes to mind when you hear the words contraception or birth control?
Preventing a pregnancy.
How do you feel about contraception?
I feel it's a woman's choice if she wants to have children or not, and if that's the form of birth control she wants to practice, and I feel it's up to her.
What are the different kinds of contraceptive methods you can think of that you know are there for women?
I know there's a diaphragm, birth control pills, depot shots, I think still IUDs. I don't know if they're still out there. Spermicide, I think is one, and natural family planning.
I know IUDs are making a big resurgence now.
Are they? Okay.
Do you know anyone that uses these methods?
No, I don't think so. I used to know people that did the natural family planning, but they chose to have children. That's the route they chose to go so they could better time when they had their children.
How old were you when you started discussing contraception for yourself?
Oh gosh, 21? I think. I think it was my best friend at the time.
Do you think people in your life supported your contraceptive choices?
Yeah.
Whose opinion most influences your contraceptive choice?
Wow, I think it's going to be my doctors. Because I'm at a stage now where I have to start thinking of my health is changing because I'm growing older. So some forms of contraceptives, A, may not be necessary, or B, may affect me differently now. So.
From your experience, what's most important to women when choosing a method of contraception?
I think it's how it's going to affect your health. If it's going to work for you. If it's, I hate to put it into a convenience method, but if you're not going to remember to take your pill at the same time every day, maybe that's not the right way for you to go.
Who do you think most women talk to about this decision?
Probably their best friend or their partner. I would hope they talk to their doctors.
So, what are your ideas and expectations about pregnancy, since you don't have children?
For me, I don't want any. My expectations are not to become pregnant, not to have children.
How would you describe your knowledge of sex when you were a child?
Little to none.
How about when you were a teenager?
Not much more. My mother didn't talk to me.
How did you learn about menstruation?
That would be my aunt.
Did you ever hear your mother, grandmother, or other female relatives discussing pregnancy or birth when you were growing up?
Not too much, nothing from my grandmother, but I know that my mother had a miscarriage. And that's really the most detailed that she got.
So your relatives never really talked to you about it? Do you know anything about the history of pregnancy and childbirth in your own community?
No.
When do you think that most women in your community start giving birth in hospitals rather than at home?
When?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I have no idea.
I'd say most people say around the 20s to 50s or so when medical care is really kind of picking up in America. I'd say. Have you heard anything about the history of contraception?
Some, not too much. The pill really took off in the 60s or 70s. It was more of an independence, feminist issue than it really was about whether to create a baby or not. I think other forms of birth control probably followed after that.
How about the history of abortion, especially before it was legalized?
Before Roe versus Wade, I don't know. I think it was the back alley abortions that women had done. And after Roe v. Wade, then they, of course, had clinics set up that could run legally and have legal abortions.
How do you think women tried to control their fertility before contraception and abortion were readily available?
I don't know if abstinence was an option for a lot of women back then because they were still maybe seen as quote-unquote property of men. So if the men wanted to create a baby or just get personal, then they were able to do that, and I don't think the woman had much say-so in whether that occurred or not.
Definitely. Something really interesting I read. I've been reading a lot of slave narratives, And I read this one about this one slave who was, well, raped by her master, and she like tried all these chemicals like pennyroyal, cotton root, all that stuff to try to get the baby out, but it wouldn't come out. So finally she ended up doing it manually, like sticking a stick up there, and it worked, but she could never have children.
Yeah. Yeah, I've heard of the coat hanger method.
Mhm.
No, not good. No.
Yeah, it's pretty gruesome.
Yeah.
Can you describe any stories, myths, old wives' tales, family folklore that you might remember from your family, either about pregnancy or anything in that vein?
Hmm. I think the only thing I ever really heard was eating saltines and bread will take care of morning sickness. I don't know.
How about any myths about how someone gets pregnant?
I heard a lot of times when I was younger that it can't happen the first time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, we all know that's not true.
How about how someone avoids pregnancy?
Well, if abstinence.
Yep. Have you heard of any recipes or herb remedies either for contraception or abortion?
No, never have. No.
Did your family ever have any religious traditions around pregnancy and motherhood?
Mm-mm.
How about ideas about like gender, like what determines whether it's male or female?
Just nature.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just, however it grows in the womb, however, whatever nature decides, that's what you get, a boy or a girl.
I've heard a lot of if you're carrying high, it's a girl, or low, it's a boy, and stuff like that
Oh.
in my interviews. How might your views and your generation's views about reproduction, abortion, and motherhood compare with those of your parents' generation?
Oh gosh. My views are that if it's a woman's choice if she wants to have a baby or not. Now this is saying that she's single. And of course if she's married, circumstances are a little different in how she decides that. If she's by herself and she's single, I think it's her decision, her contraceptive methods and how she goes about doing that. My mother's generation, probably still some contraceptive methods, but the man probably had more of a say-so about what she does with her body than we would today. And certainly you, because you're even younger.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. How about your generation versus your grandparents' generation?
Ooh, that's different. Of course, again, my generation is woman's choice and contraceptive. My grandparents' generation are you get married, then you have your children, and you stay married, and that's it.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. What do you think has remained the same among the generations?
Oh, remain the same, gosh. I guess it's, maybe it's more talked about, I guess, that back in my grandparents' generation, they might have discussed, well, how many kids do we want to have? And I think in this generation and your generation, probably, it's still discussed if we're going to have children, how many do we want to have?
Mm-hmm. So, yeah. When you were younger, do you think you had adequate sexual education?
Myself, no. No. Most of my education came from my best friend at the time, and her mother had talked to her.
Mm-hmm.
So if I had any deep questions I wasn't comfortable going to my mother with, then I asked my friend.
Interesting. Yeah, I see a lot of like people of your generation of their parents never talking to them about it.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
But then they turn around, they do talk to their children about it, and they kind of like for years and years and years and years and years before, parents never talked to their kids about it. They just kind of kept it hush, like it didn't exist.
Right.
But then something changed within your generation, and now it's a lot more relaxed. What do you think has changed?
I think probably that started with the feminist movement, actually, when that began, and women, I think in the 60s probably, when the women started feeling more independent of families and marriage and husbands, and started to make their own way in the world. And shows came about, like Mary Tyler Moore's show. You don't have a clue what I'm talking about, I know. It's okay. Women were out in the working world, and they were making their own way by themselves. So I think that allowed women to be more open about what they wanted to do, what they didn't want to do, and whether they wanted to do any of it with anybody or not. And I think everything kind of had a domino effect from there, including contraceptive, childbirth, all of it. Whether you had your own, or if you chose not to go through the whole pregnancy and adopt, or you just chose to foster or mentor or whatever they have out there as for options. So you can have a kid without really having a kid.
Very interesting. So you know a lot about the history of feminism and such.
I know some, yeah. You just got the crash course, I guess.
All right. Is there anything else that you'd like to add that we didn't talk about?
I know I mentioned that my health is changing, and I think that during the research project, I think that it would be good to allow for women beginning to go through a menopause state, because that changes a lot of things. Even like myself, I never chose to have children, so I never had any. But even though life stages and bodily changes, health changes are happening, I still think about the option is going away biologically now, even though it wasn't an option I wanted. And everything that goes with it, menstruation, and you're getting older. It's another phase of life.
Yeah, we haven't really talked a lot about menstruation, although I did talk a little bit in my last interview. And she's like, well, no one actually talks about how your body's changing during menopause. Yeah, menstruation.
It does. It does. But gravity started taking effect long ago, but you realize that you're getting older, and you need to. With menopause, other changes happen, like joint pain. So you have to watch your calcium intake, because your bone's going to get more dense. And
what I've learned from all of my studies is drink calcium now while I can still absorb it, and not when I'm older.
Exactly. Yeah.
So those have been my goals. But yeah, anything else we didn't talk about?
I don't think so. I think that's it.
Alrighty. Well, I thank you very much for participating.
Thank you for asking me.